That's right. That's right. You know what time it is. Welcome to the Mindful Warrior. Another episode. I think this is episode number 24. We're moving along on this thing. My name is Nate Jackson. With me, as always, in this room is Eben Britton, Gerard Bauer, and, of course, Gandalf the Grey. What's up, Gandalf?
Gandhi.
It's not quite a beautiful day in L.A. It's a little overcast, but it is a beautiful day nonetheless. How you feeling today, Eb?
I'm feeling great. We got a storm coming in.
That's right.
Another storm.
There's a storm brewing.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. There's a storm brewing here, brother.
Oh, always, man.
You know?
A mind storm.
I love that. Well, today we've got a special guest, Nate.
Tell me about him.
He is a Navy veteran, our first veteran guest. Exciting to have him on here. He is also the Director of Communications and Government Affairs for the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance, an operation up north. Very good friend of mine. Had a chance to sit down with this guy a few times. Really excited to have you here, Seth Smith from the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. Welcome, my brother.
Thanks a lot.
What's up, Seth?
Thanks. It's great to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity. You guys are great. Looking forward to a pretty deep discussion, I think.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome, man. We're stoked about it.
Yeah.
So let's start off just for our listeners' sake. What is the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance?
Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance is a cannabis organization in Santa Cruz, California, which is up at the Monterey Bay area. We were started back in 2011 by two U.S. military veterans, Jason Sweat and Aaron Newsom, Army and Marine Corps veterans, who had been growing cannabis personally for medicinal purposes on their own, and met each other through a nonprofit organization called the Farmer Veteran Coalition out of UC Davis. This is a non-cannabis related organization that just seeks to recruit veterans into the agricultural industry. So they met each other there. And realized that they were both growing on their own. They decided that they would get together, start growing together in order to distribute back to the veteran community a portion of everything they grew. They did that by starting a program called the Veteran Compassion Program, which is a once-a-month meeting where we donate anywhere from 2 to 5 pounds of product that we grow back to the veteran community in our area, along with camaraderie meeting, providing other services and programs for them. And that's been going on since 2011. We are licensed to cultivate in 2 facilities in Santa Cruz County in the city of Watsonville, licensed to distribute, licensed to manufacture, both Type 7 volatile and Type 6 non-volatile. And we have our own dispensary in Santa Cruz County.
That's awesome. Wow. And you supply medicine to veterans only, or veterans and non-veterans alike?
We started off just as a cultivation, and we were technically dispensing without a license at a monthly meeting that we held at just like a local community center. We had been in the local VFW post for a while, not on the grounds, outside, and we had to part ways with them. I think they were worried about their liquor license. Mm-hmm. So we're at a local community center, and we were technically dispensing without a license, and we advocated at the county level, County Board of Supervisors, for about 2 years to get them to amend their ordinance and allow us to apply for our own dispensary, which they did. And we opened up last summer, and we're now open to the public. But we still donate through our Veteran Compassion Program meeting every month to our veteran members. So previously we had been holding this meeting where veterans would come, sit down, they'd hear from other veteran service organizations, the local county Veteran Service Office, employment services, housing services, and then they would come and pick up a donation bag of medicine from us and other vendors in the area that would usually donate to us for that purpose. Now they come, all the same services and programming, but instead of picking up a donation bag, they get a voucher that they can take to our dispensary and pick up a donation bag anytime.
That's awesome, man.
So there is a need for veterans to get their hands on cannabis.
Yeah, a lot of these folks are low-income, disabled veterans. I'd say of the 125-ish we see every month, probably like 80% are Vietnam era and Korean War era veterans, also Gulf War I era veterans. We have about 6 or 8 World War II veterans that come to us. These are 90-plus-year-old men.
Wow.
And then also we're starting to see a growing population of younger veterans as well, and female veterans. So yeah, they're using it from everything from chronic pain to traumatic brain injuries to symptoms related to PTSD, anxiety, depression, insomnia, those kinds of things.
And how does what you guys are doing rub up against the VA and how they kind of approach treating these things that these guys are dealing with?
For a long time, especially from like 2004, 2002 on, when these wars started, even before that, the VA was already kind of a difficult bureaucracy to navigate for veterans.
Why is that?
I'm not really.
It's just so political.
Sure.
I mean,
well, it's imagine you're part of Kaiser Permanente or something like that, and you can go to just about any Kaiser Permanente hospital or whatever, or maybe it's specific to the city. I don't know. I'm not really sure, but healthcare is just a huge issue for everyone. So
Right.
like if you get hurt, if you're from LA and you get hurt in Michigan on a business trip or something like that, well, now you got to pay out of pocket in
Yeah.
Michigan. And maybe there's some way your insurance will cover it, but that's a process you're going to have to navigate. Maybe you're between houses and you don't have an address. Like, how do you work that out? So the VA is the same way. Like if you're moving around, I've lived in 5 different cities over the last 10 years or something like that. So if I'm constantly moving around, changing my healthcare provider,
Right.
never receiving the same or complete care or something like that, and it gets easy, or it got easy apparently, for the VA to just give people pills and look the other way,
right.
or at least do it as a stopgap measure while they were trying to figure out what it was they were going to do to have a more permanent fix.
Yeah, like they'll bring you in for a visit and say, well, until we can see you again, here, take these pills,
Exactly.
type of thing.
Yeah.
And then it would be hard to get a new appointment, right?
It's almost impossible to get a new appointment, or your appointment's like 6 months out or something, or it was at that
Right.
time. Now it's gotten a little bit better, but for a while there, it was terrible. There, some of our employees, about 60-70% of our staff are disabled veterans as well. Some of them would tell you when they first got out and went to the VA, I mean, they went in, were given 6 different bottles of pills and told, we'll see you in 3 months. Yeah.
See you in 3 months when you're a drug addict.
Exactly.
From these things we just gave
Exactly.
And you'll have more problems.
No time spent talking to them, no time spent trying to help them figure out what was going to be next. I mean, they spent, $1 million turning me into the sailor I was, and they didn't spend anything turning me back into a civilian. So,
Right. That sounds familiar.
you. Yeah.
So you spoke about it a little bit. We've talked about this. Advocacy is a big part of what you guys do. As Director of Communications and Government Affairs, you spoke about it briefly in your intro of SCVA, but what you guys are going to town hall, you're going to municipalities, you're going to the state level.
We are.
And
Yeah,
communicating with lawmakers and politicians about what exactly?
So at the local level, we're mostly communicating about what it is we do exactly and how we do it, in order to, get the local governments on board with writing and actually adopting cannabis ordinances. So there's plenty of local governments, city and county governments, that haven't adopted any cannabis ordinances yet, and we're working on trying to open a few up. We think our story, the veteran population is one that makes this a little bit more difficult not to do for communities,
Right.
Yeah.
especially in those more conservative communities that support the troops but hate cannabis. You can see the aneurysm that they have when we come and talk to them about what we do. And they're going to start opening up. Also, they're just seeing the revenue. So yeah, at the local level, that's kind of what we're doing, is trying to help educate local governments, local city staff, local community organizations on what cannabis looks like, regulated cannabis, what it looks like on the ground level, how many people it can employ, how much it does not smell, all that kind of stuff.
What do you mean how much
aspect.
it does not smell?
One of the biggest concerns you always hear from local resident, community members or local city staff or city council members or county board members is, it's gonna stink and it's gonna smell, and
The growing process is going to smell?
whatever, anything,
Or just someone smoking it? Yeah.
No, the growing process or a retail location or a distribution site.
Right.
And so we've been very transparent, offering tours to city officials, county officials, even community members, community organizations like childhood prevention, drug prevention partnerships and things like that, to come actually to our facilities, see what they look like, see how impossible it would be for a child to be there, see how much you can't tell that it's there at all, either by smell or by sight, and make them a little bit more comfortable with the prospect of having cannabis businesses in their local localities.
How does that go? Do you get a lot of turnover?
It's going great right now. Yeah. So we, for example, in Santa Cruz County, they've adopted a dispensary ordinance, and I think there's 12 or 13 dispensaries. We're the last one. They haven't adopted a cultivation, manufacturing, or distribution ordinance yet, but they've given us authorization to do all three and apply for state licensing for them without an ordinance. And that's because we've been paying taxes there for 4 years.
Oh, 4 years.
Yeah.
That's great.
And as a result, we're an organization in good standing. Same is true for the state. We just had our first no-knock inspection from the Bureau of Cannabis Control at our retail facility.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure if we're the first to have that happen, but I know that we're the first to talk about it publicly. And it was a little bit startling, but relatively painless overall. We think we were one of the first because a veteran-owned business receives priority in the processing of applications. So we're pretty sure that just put us near the top of the list for these inspections as well. And it was great. But yeah, so at the state level, we're doing that. We're talking about compassionate use, getting that addressed in the law, or getting the law changed to address that better. We pay taxes.
What is compassionate use?
So Prop 215, which is now null and void through Prop 64 passing, was more about compassionate use in the medical side of cannabis than Prop 64 is. Prop 64 was about trying to merge the medical side with a recreational side. And what's basically happened is the medical side is just getting left behind. The taxes have increased on everything. You can pay a slightly lower tax as a customer if you have a state-issued medical card, but the process of getting a state-issued medical card is more expensive and more time-consuming. So for someone who's low income, who's really leaning on cannabis as a primary form of treatment for some kind of major issue, the cost has gone up significantly for them, potentially prohibitively, which is why compassion programs that seek to provide free or very low-cost medicinal cannabis to the medical community specifically, especially low-income folks or folks who are terminally ill, things like that, is so important. And it's kind of being driven out, and we're trying to help lawmakers kind of see that and figure out ways to address it. We think we have a few ideas. I mean, we've been paying taxes on all the cannabis we cultivate for a number of years now, including what we give away. It would be great to write off the taxes on what we give away.
Right.
Yeah. If we're vertically integrated, we have, basically what could be two micro businesses. Right now, they're all separate licenses, but they're all owned by the same entities, so they're technically vertically integrated. So the cannabis that we grow for donation never enters the commercial market. In our mind, other than the cultivation tax, that means it can't be taxed anymore. But that's kind of open to interpretation. So the law could use some more clarification on that. So yeah, and the same is true for other organizations. Other groups might like to donate their products to us, but they still have to pay taxes on what they donate as far as they know. So more clarification on that, making that clear, making compassion a more kind of permanent feature of the law is something we're advocating for.
Nice.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of gray area right now. And no one really knows what's going on. I mean, I was reading about they were estimating that 9 out of 10 of the dispensaries open right now around here are not licensed.
Yeah.
Right now?
Here in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Yeah, or in Southern California? Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so Northern California or parts of Northern California have moved much more quickly than Southern California. San Diego's kind of moved relatively quickly, and maybe some small towns in the desert. But like San Francisco, Santa Cruz, Berkeley, Oakland, we've been recreational since we got the licenses before Christmas. So we've been ready to roll
since January 1.
Since January 1, we've hit the ground running. Yeah, and for the most part, all of our facilities were permitted locally already, and if they weren't permitted, we had received local authorization for that. So that's not something we've been waiting for the way other groups are in Southern California. It's all going to start coming online. I don't know that a significant number of the 9 out of 10 will get licensed, but I would say that probably goes up to like 5 out of 10, half of them by the end of the year.
Right.
But then even if that's all the number that there is, I get maybe half of those will survive through next year.
Yeah, I was reading an article yesterday about weed maps being disciplined because they are essentially providing advertising to these illegal dispensaries. Yeah. And Weed Maps is saying, well, we're not subject to the same laws that dispensaries are. We're just a tech company. And they're saying, no, you're not, and so it seems like there's a lot of gray area in this, but I imagine that's just working out the kinks type of stuff. Yeah,
basically. I mean, I went to, when I got out of the Navy, I went to community college like you, and then I went to UCLA for undergrad, and then I went to Princeton to study public policy for grad school. And this is like the best area for me to be in. I feel like with my background and my education, we're building a new industry from scratch. The laws around it, the policies, the regulations, the practices, the norms, and it's pretty exciting. It's pretty cool. It's a historic kind of thing that we all get to be a part of. We have friends, other veterans who are on the East Coast who have distilleries and things like that, and they're telling us like, that some of the laws and regulations we face are from like 1912, like 1924. Wow. Like whatever happens now is what's going to be in place for 100 years.
Yeah.
So
wow. if you're able to word your propositions correctly, you can end up being the guy who writes these laws in your own way.
Yeah, you can definitely influence the language on this. I spent some time in D.C. I was an intern for Joe Lieberman when he was a senator, and I was there to work on like ballistic missile defense stuff. Specifically, this is stuff related to things I did in the military, and I got to write like speeches for him, or at least segments of them, and he would go deliver them on the floor. And now words that I wrote are part of the Library of Congress. The story.
Hell yeah, Seth!
That's pretty dope, right?
I see you.
Yeah.
So
it feels good. But you guys get to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, for those that are at home who are not familiar with cannabis, the things that you're describing, what you're doing, don't typically go hand in hand with some kind of stoner guy. I wonder your path to cannabis. How did that happen? How long have you been consuming it? If you feel comfortable sharing that with us, and how'd you get into it? I mean, when you were in the military, when you were overseas, when you were a sailor, were you consuming? Did you know that you wanted to? Did you know that you wanted to work in this field? Talk a little bit about your path.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm born and raised in California here in Fresno. I come from a family of farmers. I'm a fourth generation farmer. We have a 100-acre vineyard up there. I've been making raisins for a number of years.
Now, correct me. Raisins come from grapes, right?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah. Good job. Thanks. And other than that, and other the other produce that's grown out there, there's weed everywhere.
Right.
And you just kind of you guys grew up, or you're not from California originally, are you?
Since I was 10.
Oh, okay, yeah. So So you guys, we all grew up in California in the 90s. I mean, the Chronic. Doggy style, like all that. Like it was hard to not
part of the culture.
It's part of the culture.
Many Clouds of Smoke. You remember that song?
Yeah, exactly. And I think people don't get that in the rest of the country too. Like it's potentially likely here in California that you'll have a joint or see a joint or roll a joint or smoke a joint long before you touch a beer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you kind of see that kind of culture when you go to the East Coast cannabis conventions. Like when the California guys go out there, the East Coast cannabis people are a little more buttoned up. You know? They're not as kind of laissez-faire.
Exactly. So I've known about cannabis or been exposed to it since before I can remember, but I didn't really partake on a regular basis until long after I got out of the military. When I was in the military, I didn't partake at all. I had a security clearance, so it was and just anyone in the military is not supposed to.
Right.
Zero tolerance and all that kind of stuff. And so 6 years I went without it. Of course, I had tried it in high school, and but for 6 years straight, I went without it. When I came back out, tried it, and was like, oh man, this is I'd had the same experience. Like, this is much stronger than I remember. So I just kind of did it, sparingly here and there. And it wasn't until my mom got real sick when I was between my first and second year at Princeton and needed a kidney transplant. Turned out I was a match. So I canceled some work I was supposed to do in Brussels, stayed in D.C. instead, and started working in Veterans Affairs so I could stay behind in the country and do all the blood tests and everything. At the end of the summer, came home to California, did the kidney transplant.
You gave her your kidney?
I gave her one of my kidneys.
Wow. Amazing, man.
Everything worked. It's all good. That was the first time I ever needed painkillers for an extended period of time. I had them here and there, but I never needed them for 2-3 weeks or something like that.
Was the pain great following that?
Oh, it's severe, yeah. The process, it's not nearly as invasive as it used to be, 10 years ago or something like that, but it's still like a C-section, basically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Through the back?
Through the front.
Through the front.
Yeah, so 3 small tool, instrument incisions on the side, and then the exit is like a 5-inch incision, below your belly button. But through your, through the muscles, all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
So it was intense. It's an intense recovery, and I didn't feel like the painkillers were giving me any real relief. And I immediately felt the difference in my personality and my mood and just everything about me, like my presence, all that kind of stuff. It was night and day. So I dumped them out. I was just like, I'd rather just deal with the pain. So I dumped them out, and I was here in California, so all my friends, cousins that came to visit would bring me cannabis in various forms, chocolate, some flower to smoke, whatever. And I noticed I got even more pain relief and far greater muscle relaxation and could actually sit up properly. I started jogging like right away, could walk. So I was like, oh. So that was kind of the first time I really felt like, oh, this medicinal side of cannabis is real. Like I just, I'd always, the chronic and doggy style. Like it was just, it was just
rolling down.
It was just something you were doing when you were chilling.
Yeah.
And I understand that, recreation is also medicine.
For sure.
Exactly.
But it can be, just like anything else, it can be abused. And we see a lot of people abuse it.
Yeah.
But that was, so that was my first kind of real experience with the medicinal properties of cannabis and kind of getting, fully aware, becoming fully aware of that. At the same time, my mother, my stepfather, who's a Vietnam veteran, they had been using medicinal cannabis for quite a while and had gotten rid of like 2/3 of their medicine cabinet as a result. My stepfather was telling me about how it was helping him with his anxiety and depression issues related to his PTSD. I faced my own PTSD issues, but, initially coming right out of the military, you just hit the ground running and you don't, your head's down, you don't really think about it. And then a few years go by, a few more years, and more memories start coming back, and you start dwelling on things a little more, and you start to realize, oh, there's some issues there I probably need to check out.
Yeah, for sure.
And cannabis helps with that. It helps loosen up, not just your physical muscles, but also your kind of emotional and mental muscles. It helps, at least for me, it helps me relax a little more, be able to like think about those things, process those memories and stuff, and deal with them in a more constructive way. Yeah.
So now, combining your own personal experience and your personal passion with cannabis, combined with what I read in your bio, what you did in the Navy, you've always been communications.
Yeah.
You've always been into that side of the world in one facet or another.
Yeah, I could see. I mean, it makes sense that I did. In the Navy, I worked as an interpreter and a cryptologist, translator, basically. But beyond that, like if you were to like look at it from a more kind of holistic perspective, what were you doing? I was kind of like a bridge builder, trying to bridge divides between cultures.
Yes.
And that's kind of what we're doing here in cannabis. We're trying to bridge a divide between that pothead, stoner, medicinal, cannabis lover, advocate culture and the rest of the culture that has, put this off to the side and put it in the shadows for so long. And we want to bring it out into the light. One of the things we tell these cities when we go in and we're trying to open a new dispensary, and they want us to be in the industrial area or something like that. And we're like, you guys, we're not going to do it. We'll tell them we're not coming because this shouldn't be hidden.
Right.
Yeah. Just put it out in the front. It's going to be fine. Like put it out in the light.
I love that, man. Just open the conversation up about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is a difficult distinction for some people to make. What you're just talking about, the recreational versus medicinal side, is that something that you enjoy can actually also be good for you. It's going to be getting you healthy,
Exactly.
And I equate it to like recess.
Yeah.
Playing on the playground. That's fun. And it's also healthy for you.
Yeah.
And it's people can't wrap their minds around that. But the sense of community is really important. I mean, for athletes, when we stopped playing, we scattered. We didn't, you end on your own. You get fired when you get a tap on the shoulder, you fill up your bag, and you walk out by yourself. There's no groups for you to be a part of. There's no one calling you. You're kind of just on your own. And this cannabis community has kind of brought us together and introduced us to a lot of athletes going through a similar thing. And I imagine the veterans are very similar.
That's exactly what the Veteran Compassion Program was designed for. It was built for. That's why Aaron and Jason started this. Was because they both understood that this plant was helping them, that it would probably help others, that others were already self-medicating with it as well, and that none of us were talking about it with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And we weren't allowed to talk to our doctors about it. So, there's a lot of information that just wasn't getting shared, couldn't get shared, wasn't getting passed down. At the same time, it only serves to further isolate you, what I'm saying? Because now you're doing something that's taboo. And so you want to isolate yourself even further.
Right.
Right.
And that's dangerous. That's dangerous but for athletes and for veterans. Athletes and veterans go through a lot of the same issues.
Yeah.
We face a lot of the same health issues, chronic pain, traumatic brain injury, joint issues, muscle issues, spasms, all that kind of stuff, back pain, back problems. And we face the same issues when we transition out of those careers, isolation, inability to like identify. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like your identity's been
Right.
stripped
Right.
from you.
Yeah,
You know?
Lack of
absolutely.
purpose,
Lack
you
of
know,
purpose,
no
yeah.
more camaraderie.
Yeah.
The real world, it doesn't have the same kind of
Yeah,
reward
nothing will
system
ever be as exciting or
as-
as
yeah.
meaningful as what you did.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's difficult, and when you don't have anyone to talk to about that, it just makes it even worse. I mean, I watch what's that, Hard Knocks?
Yeah.
It's cruel.
Yeah, it is.
When they
It's
send
in
people
bye.
out. Yeah.
They knock on their door at 4 a.m. just to be a dick.
You got
Tell
your
'em-
playbook?
Yeah,
Come on.
yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, it makes sense, but it's like you would think that there would be something in place to help folks out, and there isn't. And so it's great that you guys have done what you've done with the organizations you've started and been a part of, and the advocacy that you guys have been doing yourselves for other athletes, because I think you're seeing a lot more athletes feel comfortable about coming out and talking about this publicly now as well. Even potentially athletes that are, unfortunately, athletes that are still athletes.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So I think even them are getting like, you know what, we don't care anymore. We're just going to do what we want.
Well, what we're learning is a lot of it is about the language. It's about how you talk about it. You
Yeah.
know? If we're talking about smoking blunts and, getting high, then no one's going to listen to us. But when we use the language that you're using and talk about it as a medicine and talk about it as an alternative to opioids and talk about, the infinite psychological problems that this can help us with and relationships and just opening up, I mean, it's a no-brainer for people. But the league is a political organization in many ways, and they're not going to lead the charge on this. They're going to kind of hang back and see what happens, and they're hiding behind the Schedule 1 classification of the substances. Until they change that, I don't see the league jumping on it. But
Hopefully.
what do you think? I mean, do you think they would lead the charge
I
there and say?
I think that they have an incredible opportunity to lead the charge.
They do.
Based on the issues that they're facing. Number one, CTE and concussions. Number two, opiates. Two issues that cannabis can be a great solution to.
Yeah.
Going back to the VA.
I was going to say, the same is true for
in the
VA.
last year, the VA has had a bit of a roller coaster ride with cannabis. I mean, at one point they said, we're going to allow vets to start using cannabis or allow VA doctors to start prescribing vets with cannabis.
Right.
And then not that much longer after, they retracted that and said, no, never mind, we're not doing that.
Yes. So the VA, just like the MFL, the VA could be leading the way on this, and they're not. The VA has gone back and forth over the last several months on not so much on whether or not VA doctors can prescribe it. They've always been certain that was a no.
Okay.
But that they seem to have alluded to being far more comfortable with veterans speaking to their doctors about cannabis use, with ensuring that there would be no negative repercussions or consequences associated with communicating honestly and openly with your VA doctor about your cannabis use, because they wanted to start actually, building health models and better plans for folks based on the information, at least anecdotally, that they were getting. The other thing is, and they've gone back and forth on that. The other question was whether or not the VA would be doing any research with regard to cannabis and how it treats, or whether or not it's a treatment for PTSD or other issues. There's a research study that's being organized by Dr. Sue Sisley down in Arizona. That she's trying to get off the ground. It still hasn't gotten off the ground. It's in jeopardy of never getting off the ground.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's concerned that what she thinks the problem is that she needs to recruit veterans, specifically combat veterans with PTSD diagnoses, and that has to come
Through the VA.
Through the VA, yeah, you need their help to do that. And she's not getting any cooperation from them, and they're saying it's because it's not legal. Here in California, I can tell you that the West LA VA, along with in partnership, I think, with UCLA, I can tell you that Stanford University and the Palo Alto VA, in partnership with us, we've done studies with the VA. You know what I'm saying? We did a study on the benefits of cannabis to treat sleep disorders in combat veterans 2 years ago. The head researcher from that study is now with a pharmaceutical company in Pennsylvania, I believe.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What were the findings?
We don't know. They won't release them. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What?
And Sue's, that's bullshit.
What's the point of doing it?
To take it to a pharmaceutical company, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Data mining so someone else can make money on it.
Exactly.
Crap,
and
man.
part of the reason, so Sue's study is actually, Dr. Sisley's study is actually FDA approved. It's the first FDA approved study. Ours didn't need to be FDA approved because we provided the medicine. and they just had to come take the surveys and stuff.
Okay.
Like that. She's actually getting the medicine through the government channels and stuff.
Right, from Ole Miss.
From Ole Miss.
Which she's taking pictures of. It looks like fucking hay.
We've been hitting the pavement hard with our local congressman, who's also a Navy veteran, trying to get. We're basically telling them, like, give us that contract. We produce far more stuff. We're doing it legally, and we have the license to produce whatever you need. Speaking to your point about the language we use, one of the things we've done in cities that's helped us get licenses is shown them that we don't make candies. We're not trying to do anything that's attractive to kids.
Right.
We are trying to promote the medicinal value of this, and so we're making products that look medicinal. And they like that. They appreciate that. We changed our logo because it was too cartoony and colorful and potentially attractive to children. And they like that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the more seriously we take ourselves, the more seriously we'll be taken. So.
Absolutely.
So what products do you make edibles instead of candy? Or do you make edibles?
We'll make tincture oils and gel caps.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
We don't make any chocolates or anything like that. And actually, our tincture oils have shot up in value because tincture oils, by the state standards, aren't considered edible. So they don't have to fall into the same kind of per serving or per package.
It's 10 milligrams per serving and 100 milligrams
per package. Yeah. And it can be higher for medicinal, still 10 milligrams a serving, but higher per package for medicinal. But tinctures aren't considered that, so they can be, whatever we need them to be. Yeah.
It's great.
They're not as cool, they're not as, soft or whatever as a brownie or a cookie or something like that. But they're also not something that your kid's going to see and mistake for anything.
A gummy worm. They're just
Yeah. And they're easier to control your dosage. You're going to see exactly how much you're giving yourself. So,
right. Yeah, there are a lot of people having some scares these days because they're unfamiliar with cannabis and they eat a whole brownie. And I think there's a lot of emergency room visits these days from overeating cannabis. And what do they do when you get there? They're like,
there's nothing.
Hey, man.
Sleep it off.
Take a nap. Yeah.
So I've
We'll
actually heard that CBD is the antidote to too much THC. Is that correct?
Yeah, the endocannabinoid system is amazing. Yeah. And it wants CBD more than THC. So if you feel like you have a little bit too much THC in your system, you can take some CBD, and the CBD will kick out the THC from your receptors.
Wow. Right. It's antagonistic.
Yeah. So when did you start learning about the science of it all?
It's probably about a year before I joined the team in Santa Cruz. I just got way more interested in it. I started reading more up on it. I just kind of got, as all of us have, we were using it for medicinal use on our own, and as the opportunity started to present itself a little more that this was going to open up, I just started doing more research. I was already kind of hooked anyway, and I needed to know as much as I could to try to figure out what I could do.
Right.
And it's amazing. I mean, there's still so much we don't know, so that's a really cool part, I think.
Considering all the different facets of what you do and all the different facets of this industry and this business, what would you say is your specialty or the one that gets you most excited? The science of the plant?
No, the law gets me
Policies?
most excited. Policy gets me most excited for sure. Yeah, because I know that the science stuff is going to happen, and we'll figure that out. The policy stuff is going to happen now and will be what it is for decades, potentially. So that gets me pretty excited because whatever, if we can get something really cool in place now, well, then that thing is in place for decades, and that's great. You know what I'm saying? So if we can make sure that equity is a part of it, if we can make sure that small businesses are still able to thrive, if we can make sure that standards are as high as possible, if we can make sure that testing is as good as possible, and if we can make sure that as many people get to safely access it as possible, then I think we're winning. Yeah.
Would it be a goal is there someone who runs the VA? Is there a governing body that sort of handles how the VA functions? Is it a goal of yours to change policy within the VA, or are you more looking at that's kind of a lost cause, sort of outside externality to this whole thing, and let's focus on the state level, the city level, making change there?
So what we're focused on the state level, the main thing we're focused on the state level is taxes, right?
Okay.
So we want to make sure that the tax structure, everything else seems to be okay for us as an organization. If the taxes were a little bit more lenient or allowed for more flexibility, that would be helpful for us in the long run as a company. At the local level, everything, whenever we're advocating, it's for a license, always. We're trying to get licensed. We think that we can do what we're doing in Santa Cruz and Watsonville in multiple cities. We think we can be the VFW elite, so, excuse me, that's what we're looking for there. At the federal level, the VA is a department of the federal government. So there's there's a VA secretary, the way there's a defense secretary and a secretary of state and all that kind of stuff. So that's who primarily runs it. But ultimately it's run by the president or the executive branch. Nothing's going to happen at the VA until the federal law changes.
Yeah, and he's not going to be the guy to do that, I don't think.
Maybe.
Well, you never know, actually, what he's going to do.
If he's there still, if he's running for a second term, I could see him legalizing cannabis. That might put him over the mark. You know what I'm saying?
That would actually make him a lot of fans of.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If I hold that ace in his back pocket and see if he can make it so that buzzer.
He might just pull out a bong on stage and just rip one during.
God knows.
During a debate with Bernie.
I'm sure his kids have friends who are invested in cannabis businesses. I have no doubt. You know what I'm saying? They're coming from that financial world.
Well, that's what we talk about when we talk about the NFL and cannabis. I mean, the ownership, they're not supporting it yet, but that's because they haven't figured out how to make money on it yet.
I don't know how they have it.
I mean, because they're just in a different business world than that. They just don't have those. And when they finally do realize, that they can make money on it, that they can reduce some healthcare costs, in my opinion, by allowing their players to do it or whatever it is, then they're going to start thinking about it and get behind it. I feel like Jerry Jones is kind of scratching the surface there.
Yeah, and I read this article in Bleacher Report a little while ago. That was released around the same time as that Jerry Jones comment where he just flat out said, we need to remove marijuana from the banned substance list. And, there's all kinds of argument and debate about, Jerry, well, you've got the most, guys getting popped and suspended, so of course you want it to be taken off the banned substance list. But with that, though, there was word that there has been an underground swell of support among owners for cannabis legalization in the league.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense to me. I think owners are... we'd be naive to think that these guys aren't already thinking about it, aren't already making moves to, my belief is that the league probably already has a product coming down the line that they're going to put into every training room. Every team doctor is going to have one in his kit, whether it's a cannabinoidal inhaler or an EpiPen or whatever it is, that when a guy goes down with a concussion, they're running on the field with this thing, hitting him with the CBD or THC.
That's what they're doing.
No way, dude.
That's what they do in Israel.
For sure.
I don't
like the Israeli military.
That's already.
Issues.
I think they're already on top.
And then they're going to cut to a commercial brought to you by Budweiser. No fucking way.
Cut to a commercial brought to you by Weed Maps.
Yeah,
no, it'll be a commercial brought to you by Budweiser, and then somewhere else in that commercial segment there'll be a commercial of the same kind of Pfizer commercial, but it'll be for that cannabis EpiPen.
Well, I think
they're missing the boat. I mean, they're missing the boat if they're not, and good for us if they're not, because that's more opportunity for us to make that happen.
I think they just wanted, maybe Jerry Jones is just trying to do it, or maybe some owners will be interested in doing it because they know they're the best. Some of the best players are going to be the players that smoke. And they want those players to be able to be on their team.
Yeah. That's what we talk about. So that's what we need to find out. These guys who do consume, are they better players? Are they healthier? Do they have longer careers? Do they remember the plays more? Are they more reliable teammates? More punctual? I believe that they are. That was me, and that was a lot of my friends. I feel like when you consume cannabis, you're extra aware of everything else because you don't want to get in trouble for anything else because you're like already kind of breaking the law, quote unquote.
Exactly.
And so you got to do everything else right.
Right.
And so I think the league, if they were to kind of study these guys with an open heart and an open mind, would see that it was actually keeping them on the field longer, keeping them healthier, allowing them to heal faster from their brain injuries, and making them smarter on the field. I mean, when you're smacking heads every day for a job and you're also trying to memorize a really thick playbook that's very complex, it's not an easy thing to do, and you see guys start to fall off just because they can't handle the mentality of it, and how much of that is affected by the fact that their brains are scrambled because they're not getting the cannabinoids to kind of keep things
can't
binded
focus.
in there.
Yeah. Stuff's not tight. Yeah, absolutely. Right. No, I completely agree, and I think one of the things that NFL could do that the VA could also do, which is what we were trying to get them to do, is not not start prescribing it. We know you can't do that until it's federally legal. We don't need you to like pay for it or anything. You can't do that until it's federally legal. Okay, we get that. Just stay out of the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Just stay out of the way.
Yeah.
Take it off the banned substance list for the NFL and for VA. Let us talk to you all we want about it and make that part of the thing that you're just not going to bar. And the same is true for businesses. Any employer, it should be off of their banned substance list.
Yeah.
That'd be one of the best things they could possibly do for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a utopic world, of course, they're never going to allow cannabis in war on the combat field, but
Israel does.
Israel does.
Yeah,
What I was going to ask you
Israel
is,
already has a nasal spray that they use for soldiers after explosions. It's issued to medics, what you were talking about. They give it to them in a nasal spray form to combat traumatic brain injuries caused by explosions.
Wow.
They also just did a study, 2-year study, where they allowed a member or a component of their reserve units to continue to use medical cannabis while they were on active duty. All Israeli soldiers get to use medical cannabis when they're on reserve status. They allowed them to continue to use it on active duty.
Amazing.
So they're already doing it.
I was going to ask you, of what you know of combat, and you were in Iraq, right?
Yes.
Yeah, for how long?
I was stationed in the Persian Gulf for about 4.5 years. I was never in Iraq for more than a couple days at a time.
Okay. But of what you know of combat, would it benefit these guys to be able to go home at the end of it at night and consume cannabis? I mean, would that make them better soldiers? Would that allow them to separate themselves from what they've been dealing with and witnessing, or would that be just too much to handle?
At go home there is no go home at night. So
I guess I don't mean home. I don't mean home. I mean wherever you are, where you sleep.
I mean, so like if you're at a FOB or on a patrol in Afghanistan, you're good chance that for like a year you're doing that. A good chance, 60% of that time you were walking through Kush fields. So if you wanted to do it, you did it.
Right.
And we have body cam video of firefights taking
those
place
are
in
amazing.
Kush fields in
Oh,
Afghanistan.
really?
Yeah,
I've seen it. It's pretty spectacular.
Wow.
So that was a thing. Would it be helpful to them? I'm not sure. I don't know. I think it. Yeah. I mean, my kind of automatic answer is yes, especially for sleep purposes. It would be helpful, and lack of sleep exacerbates all other problems.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if you can get someone a solid 7 hours, they have a better chance of dealing with whatever's coming their way that day.
Yeah.
Whether physically or emotionally. So I think in that way it could definitely help. But
The reason why I asked that,
I'd want them to have to go to the med tent and get it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, small
exactly.
amounts and stuff.
Yeah.
The reason why I asked that is because I know that when I was playing football towards the end of my career, and I was particularly beat up or particularly traumatized or annoyed or irritated by whatever was going on, and I would go home and smoke a little bit. It put me in a place where I could separate myself from that for a couple of hours before I went to sleep, and then I would rest really well, and then I'd wake up the next morning ready to go,
Man,
and I would feel
awesome.
refreshed and kind of ready to go throw myself into that tornado again.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, well that makes sense the way if you explain it to me that way. That makes a lot of sense. I think I think they would absolutely benefit from having that.
What's your hesitation? Just curious.
Abuse. Yeah, like anything else, because
Like guys are
what they
just
have
smoking
what they have
joints,
is alcohol and Red Bull, right, or Monster, or
Right.
even more intense kind of energy drinks, and they abuse the hell out of that.
Yeah.
and amphetamines.
Yeah, amphetamines, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
They're not giving pain pills over there?
they'll give you pain pills if something happened, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, no, this is the military. You get ibuprofen and hydrate. Yeah.
And so they don't they don't do mood stabilization, Xanax, Adderall, things
over
like
there
that in the military?
No, if you need something like that over there, you're going home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's probably plenty of people who do need something like that over there,
Right.
and you just won't say it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to mean you're going home.
Okay.
Did much of that that policy stem out of Vietnam, where guys were
Yes.
self-medicating with whatever
Yes.
they could find?
Absolutely it did, and it was a lot of Vietnam veterans who here in California who have been the major advocates for all this stuff. Dennis Perron was a Vietnam veteran.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
these guys have been advocating for this for decades,
Yeah.
decades and decades, and a lot of it was because they were doing that over
Yeah.
there. They were self-medicating
Yeah.
at night or when they got back to their camp or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
but that, self-medicating with cannabis became self-medicating with opium, became self-medicating with heroin.
LSD,
Then they came back to America with a heroin
the problem is, to me, the problem is self-medicating. Like, I don't want to self-medicate. I want to be able to go to the doctor and be like, yo, how much cannabis should I be taking?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because cannabis is an amazing drug. Like I said, your endocannabinoid system is amazing. It's one of the few drugs that, for medicinal purposes, the more of it you have in your system, the less of it you need over time to maintain that same level.
Yeah, I find that too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm at the point now where I just take, one hit and I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good.
And it will last you a good couple hours.
Yeah.
And, you get the high just for a little bit, but you feel the actual effect, the body effect, and the emotional and spiritual effect for hours. And you're good.
Yeah.
And you can maintain now that your system is in, you got the proper amount in you. You know what I'm saying? Everyone is walking around with a cannabinoid deficiency. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Basically, anyone who's not smoking weed is walking around with a cannabinoid deficiency.
Absolutely.
And once you get your levels right, you it's real nice.
So essentially, we are born ready to receive this plant.
We are.
And it's actually imprinted in our DNA to be ready for it. Like, we have an endocannabinoid system that links only with cannabis, right?
And there are cannabinoids.
There's cannabinoids in all kinds of
in
stuff.
breast milk.
Yeah. There's cannabinoids in all kinds of product and all kinds of.
I didn't know that. I did not.
All kinds of produce and stuff have cannabinoids, but nothing like cannabis.
Right.
That is the cannabinoid delivery system, and our bodies are built to have it. We're meant to have it. We obviously evolved with this plant. So it's pretty cool. I don't know. When did you guys get started?
High school.
Yeah.
Freshman year of high school is when it first started for me. And right around the time I first put on a helmet, started playing football. And actually, the first time I ever smoked was summer before my freshman year of high school. And then a month later, I got my first concussion. And I think my brain was already protected. It was primed. I never had any head injury problems after that. It was not a recurring thing for me. And cannabis was something that was not number one in my life. Sports was. Athletics was my number one thing. I was a very dedicated athlete. So cannabis would never get in the way of me reaching those goals. It was always something that I reached to as a supplement to that. And I found it, to me, I think it made my hand-eye coordination better. It made me more focused. It made me more empathetic. It made me kind of sit back a little more and pay attention to my surroundings, which I think makes you a better athlete sometimes, by being able to notice the tells of your opponents and being able to see things a little more. Because once you're out on the field, you got to go. You don't sit back and wait, but being able to observe things going on around you, I think cannabis strengthens those ties. But back then it was recreational. It was like you said, rolling down the street, hotboxing cars and stuff like that. But lo and behold, it was having medicinal properties back then. And so it is a weird thing when you talk about adolescence and cannabis and athletes in particular, football players or collision sport athletes. How do I advise these people when they ask me? When the parents say, well, what do I tell my kids? It's hard for me to tell them. What do I tell the kids? I say no. I say wait, but like, what do you think?
I mean, I would tell your kids, like, you'll give them what they need, and you can come to us and get something that's like a 40-1 CBD to THC ratio.
Right.
Like, your kid's they're not going to feel a thing. It'll be like they're taking a multivitamin. Like, they won't know. You don't even have to tell them what it is. Get them on a high CBD. It's like, for children or for any person, for any living human, I think a CBD is fine. There shouldn't be any problem with that. That's why hemp oil is not technically illegal or something like that. So if you can get hemp oil or isolate or distillate from a reputable source here in the States, you can make whatever product you want and sell it to whoever you want without a license, a specific kind of cannabis license or paying any specific cannabis fees or cannabis taxes. It's not considered cannabis. You can do the same thing with cannabis, make it a high CBD rich type thing, but because it's coming from the cannabis sativa plant, they still consider it cannabis, which is weird. But you can go into Whole Foods right now and buy some CBD.
Yeah. It's such an interesting time because all these conversations are starting to be had and these old ideals are starting to be really challenged.
I mean, I think we just all kind of, the amount of information that we have now, stuff, we all kind of are understanding that there are several things that our society has put in place or that's been a part of our culture for a number of years that make no damn sense at all. Whether it's making cannabis illegal, or specifically locking up tons and tons of people for cannabis,
right,
or other things that shouldn't necessarily result in prison time,
Right.
To our education system, to
even football.
Yeah,
like football, like it's become incredibly clear. Hey, if you're going to play football, you're probably going to come away with some brain damage,
and you're going to die sooner than you might otherwise have.
You're going to have residual
thanks for that.
lifelong damage
to
deal with and to cope with, and that's just something that's a reality of the game.
Yeah,
there's no hiding that anymore. This isn't, let's let little Johnny play football. It'll be so heroic and beautiful to watch him go through it. It's like, no, there's a lot of consequences that come along with letting little Johnny play.
Mm-hmm. But there still is some heroism as well.
Absolutely.
I don't think you would totally erase all those kind of heroic glory.
I don't think football is going to go away. I don't either. I think less and less people are going to play.
Yeah.
I think we're never going to miss a World Cup again.
Well, we would probably say that 4 years ago, and look what happened, dude.
No, I'm saying like so many athletes that would have played football will now play soccer.
But I thought that was going to already happen with our soccer team, and it was just kind of so disappointing that they didn't make this.
It really was.
Yeah, they didn't make it.
They didn't even qualify for the World Cup.
I think they need some cannabis.
They do, man.
Get it.
Well, it is a legitimate problem in soccer as well with all the headers and stuff.
Yes, the repetitive head injuries from headers. Yeah, it doesn't take. You don't need to be concussed. There's like micro concussions.
Subconcussive hits. That's what causes the CTE.
Yeah.
And because the CTE is most concentrated in offensive and defensive linemen, not the guys who are getting hit coming across the middle diving for a ball.
Not those crackbacks or anything.
No,
like
not that.
Yeah.
That's the TV shit. Mm-hmm. What's really happening is these dudes doing this from 90 inches away, or not even 2 feet away, just bang bang bang, all day long.
40 car accidents.
40, yeah. Nobody pays attention to those guys. It's all about protecting the quarterback or the receivers or whatever it is. But really, it's in the trenches that we need to address this disease in this game.
I was thinking about that the other day. I think I was flipping through channels and Varsity Blues was on, man, and that was one of the first movies that really talked about what happened, and the pressure that's put on athletes as well, even from a young age. This kid was like 16, 17.
Right.
That pressure put on him,
and it has the most ridiculous culminating play where he that does that like pass back to him where he like drags, you know what I'm talking about? Billy Bob.
Billy Bob gets through.
He's like
he's bobbling and guys are hanging on to him. That's a good movie though.
It's a great football movie.
Cuter.
Sure,
yeah, good times. I think wasn't one of them smoking? One of them did smoke weed in there when they stole the cop car.
Oh yeah. What was his name? Yeah, Skeeter. Is that what it was?
Cooter?
Scooter.
Great movie. Somebody will tell you in the comments.
The whipped cream bikini.
The whipped cream bikini.
Johnny Moxon.
Yeah, it's good names.
Johnny Mox.
James Vanderbeek.
It's just bringing me back. I don't want your life.
Well, that coach, John Voight, did an amazing job.
John Voight's unbelievable.
So good as just a villainous coach in that.
He really was.
Was it fun? Was it fun? I hope it was fun.
I bet John Voight smokes weed.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
The fastest growing population of new cannabis users is the baby boomer generation.
Oh, yeah.
We see them in the dispensary every day.
Right.
They got questions. They're wondering. They're wanting to supplement their medications. Same way veterans are trying to get off pharmaceuticals from the VA. Same way athletes are trying to get off opioids or whatever drugs they're giving you guys. Muscle relaxers and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
That same is true for older folks who are trying to get rid of their hypertension medication or their whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And they're coming in droves. They're getting the topical creams for arthritis, lupus or other nerve issues.
Yeah.
And they're loving it. So, I think as long as the old folks are on board,
right,
we're going to be okay because the young folks are definitely on board.
Yeah.
Well, from the football perspective, I think one of the quiet issues that's slowly coming to the surface is this medication because of decreased cognitive function from all of the hits. Like this dude we met with a few weeks ago and Kyle Turley talks about it a lot, that I wasn't exposed to in the league. However, looking back, based on this documentary that just came out that I'm in, we'll talk about in a second, but
I missed you at South by Southwest.
I know, man. Missed you, brother. Nate was going to come, but Nate's got a lot of traveling, getting married in September. So
Nice.
But, guys are being prescribed heavy doses of antidepressants, antipsychotic, anti-anxiety meds for all the concussions they're dealt with. And you're talking about putting these strange chemical substances into an already vulnerable environment in a brain that's been damaged, that's got a lot of crossed wires, it's got a lot of inflammation, and you're exacerbating these issues. Guys are talking about not being able to leave the house because I'm so depressed and my body hurts and I can't think about anything but, how sad I am and how, isolated I feel. And going back to cannabis and finding their way back to cannabis. For me, looking back at this documentary, it's called Take Your Pills. They did a really incredible job. It's really about the amphetamine epidemic in America. This idea that we all need to be able to optimize our production rate to, infinity levels through prescription drugs like Adderall and Ritalin. And for me, looking back at my experience when I started taking Adderall in the league, it was all about my declining cognitive function. I was having a harder time in meetings. I was feeling constantly depressed. My body wasn't doing the same things it used to do. And Adderall lifted me out of that. We've talked about it. I've talked about opiates. Opiates for me made me feel like shit. It was super clear to me that the opiates made me feel like shit. But on the other hand, Adderall was there and lifted me out of that, got my brain functioning at a higher level. At least my perception was that it was functioning at a higher level, what they talk about in the documentary. But I had these tremendous crashes, these spirals into depression and blackness that, to the point where my mind would just keep racing throughout the day and my body would be exhausted. And then I need to dive into the other substances to get myself to sleep, whether it was alcohol or, smoking as much weed as possible to calm my nervous system back down. But, these medications to treat these brain disorders, the concussions, depression, all the psychological disorders that come with the concussions and the subconcussive hits, these medications are fucking people up. From veterans to athletes to the elderly, and people want to get off of it.
It's absolutely true. I mean, I think you've seen the video from one of our employees, Jake Scallon. He's a U.S. Air Force veteran.
Yeah, amazing.
Jake was a security forces for the Air Force, which was like military police, air-based defense. And he spent a lot of time sitting in a guard tower with a Barrett 50 cal sniper rifle. And he's got a lot of different issues that he faced when he got out. He was medically retired from the Air Force, and he talks about the same kind of problems that you were talking about. I mean, he was prescribed atypical antipsychotics, Seroquel, and other things for sleep and depression. He was on all types of opioids, painkillers for back problems that he has, and he couldn't, he felt the same kind of way. He couldn't start the day without taking something. And then once he took something to get the day started, he's got to take something to keep it going. And then he's got to take something to come back down and try to get to sleep. Can't get to sleep till late. Got to take something real strong. And now you can't start the day again. Yeah. And you just fall into that cycle and you're isolated. He said a friend of his told him one time that he just never knows what he's saying. Like, I can't understand you, dude, ever. Wow. And he said no one had ever told him, like he didn't, that he wasn't making sense most of the time. And switching over to cannabis changed his life. And I mean, the same is true for many of my friends. I got a friend, I was telling you that I'm a Pat Tillman scholar, got a scholarship from their foundation. And another buddy of mine, Socrates, is a Army veteran, West Point graduate, Apache attack helicopter pilot, multiple deployments, came out, went to MIT Business School, was a consultant in Silicon Valley, and was losing his mind. Wow. And you know what I'm saying? It was this is a very high powered, type of individual, making things happen, was, losing it, and was going over to Santa Cruz every weekend to surf anyway. And his wife introduced him to his first joint, and it changed his life. And the same as, we hear that story repeated over and over and over by veterans, by athletes, by regular folks. who've been, medicating for a long time, pharmaceutically, what they thought, and it was a healthy way because it's coming from doctors, right? So why wouldn't it be the right thing to do?
Right.
And I think a lot of doctors, if they had access to cannabis, would always prescribe cannabis over just about everything else they can prescribe.
I hope so. I feel like we that's the next sort of educational movement is getting doctors to even understand what the endocannabinoid system is.
I mean, I don't even know how they you think about how bad the opioid epidemic is right now. I don't even trust doctors.
No, I don't trust them at all. I feel like we've so willingly handed over our health to our doctors, and they've just been prescribing what these pharmaceutical companies come into their office and say, hey, fellas, we got a new pill. It treats this. Mm-hmm. Anytime a patient comes in and says they have X, Y, or Z, just sign them up with this and we'll get you a kickback. These guys don't know what the fuck they're prescribing. They say these people come in, they're selling the drugs, they're saying this treats depression, this treats pain. So prescribe any patient that comes in and with, these issues, you prescribe them this pill. And that's it. And they go, oh, well, these guys know it's backed by science and research, and they've done the time to figure out what it is and what it means and what these pills do, so I'm going to trust them.
Yeah. But at the same time, we can't allow the two to go, drift so far apart where we don't trust the doctors and they think, we're a bunch of hippies. We got to find a way to bring it together. We got to find a way to extend that olive branch and to respect the job they do, because you're going to need a doctor at some point.
For sure.
You need doctors. You and I have had a lot of injuries, and I imagine you've come across some great doctors who've helped you a lot.
I have.
And so, and I'm sure you have as well.
Oh yeah, I've had multiple surgeries. Yeah, the doctors and nurses have been great, but some of those doctors who aren't supposed to talk to you about cannabis have told me, like, yeah, if cannabis is helping you more than this, stick with the cannabis.
I've had that as well.
So we gotta hold out hope that the doctors are starting to realize it, and that thanks to guys like you, Seth, who are using the language needed to communicate these ideas, that's going to happen.
We're working on it. I appreciate that, but we're working on it. We're trying to make that happen. We're starting to see it happen a lot more. There's actually I don't know if I can say it, but there's a, just so you know, New Jersey's coming online soon. We were talking about that earlier. We're not sure exactly in what capacity they're going to come online, whether they're going to look more like Florida or more like California. But whatever they do, we want to make sure that veterans have access to what they need. Yeah. And some veterans from New Jersey have come out and visited us, taken tours of our facilities and talked to us about what we're doing and how we did it, including some that are active or in the reserves now and are doctors. So it's starting to
make it move.
It's starting to seep in pretty deep now.
That's great.
One step at a time. That's how we got to do it.
Yeah. So it's that's what we're up to, and hopefully we can take a couple leaps. We're tired of steps.
Yeah, man. You're taking leaps, man.
Hell yeah, man. Just keep doing your thing.
Yeah, you guys too.
We love you guys.
Yeah. We appreciate it, man. We've been excited to follow you guys, and we're always excited to see your advocacy efforts. We saw the Netflix disjointed ad that you guys got done. That was great. And we're just excited to see what's next for you.
It's awesome, man. Likewise. Anything you want to plug?
If you're ever in Santa Cruz, come see us. Our dispensary's at 2826 South Rodeo Gulch Road, number 6. Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. You can look us up online, www.scveteransalliance.com, or Instagram, Facebook, at SC Veterans Alliance.
Beautiful, man.
Heck yeah, man.
I love it.
You like how I got that? It was
it's perfect. You're a professional.
Boom, baby.
I've said that before, man.
Streamline that shit.
I can't rap, but I can flow with the promotion.
I love that.
All right.
All right, Mindful Warriors.
Well, yeah, and everyone out there, check out our Mindful
iTunes.
iTunes. Comment, like it, do whatever, share it with your friends, and write to us. Let us know if you're liking it, what you'd like to hear us talk about. We want to interact with you guys.
Hear your tales.
That's right. See us at Twitter, Mindful Pod.
Yep.
And
Instagram, Mindful Warrior Podcast.
That's
and
right.
our Facebook page, the Mindful Warrior Podcast, as well. Awesome, man. Thanks, Nate.
Thanks, you,
Jed. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you, Seth.
This has been another episode of the Mindful Warrior Podcast. Later.
Peace. Thanks for listening to the Mindful Warrior podcast, brought to you by Athletes for Care, a health and wellness resource for athletes of all ages. Don't miss out on Nate's books, Slow Getting Up and Fantasy Man,